Early Research Stories, your podcast uncovering stories from influential figures in the field of learning and instruction. What motivated them to become researchers? What are their next projects? And what advice do they have for young researchers of EARLI, the European Association for Research on Learning and Instruction? Your host, Stefan Siegel.
Today's guest in the Early Research Stories podcast is the wonderful David.gijbels. David is Professor for Learning and Instruction and Vice Dean in the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Antwerp. He graduated from the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences of the University of Leuven in Belgium and started his professional career in the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands. In 2011, he received the Eric de Court Award for Young and Promising Scholars in the field of learning and instruction at the biannual conference of the European Association for Research on Learning and Instruction. In his widely read and often cited research, he addresses a broad range of subjects related to the quality of and relation between learning and assessment in higher education, problem-based learning, or work-related learning. From 2014 to 2017, he acted as editor-in-chief of Educational Research Review. He's also part of several editorial boards. In this podcast, he elaborates on his career, his involvement in EARLI, and his current and future research. I'm very delighted that David is here today and hope that you enjoy this episode. So, hello David, it's great that you're here. Where are you calling from?
Hello, the pleasure is all mine. I'm calling from my home office in Siegel, a beautiful small city in Belgium.
That sounds really lovely. A warm welcome. I would say we just start with the first thematic area, your personal career and your own motivations for becoming a researcher. How and why did you start your academic career?
Good question. How it started is probably easier than why it started. It started, I think, when I was already in my last year as a master's student. As you just told in the introduction, I did my master's, which did not had a label master at that time, but at the University of Leuven. And in our last year, we needed to do an internship. And I did a research internship at the University of Maastricht in a department that was called at that time Educational Innovation and Information Technology. So I did an internship there, a research internship, and I got the opportunity to stay there. So after I graduated, I didn't think really hard about that, but I accepted that I could stay there a while, and my job there was not only research, but it was in a faculty of law, and the task I was involved in program evaluations, staff development, and also educational innovation projects in that faculty of law. And I had the opportunity to also do some research on the topics I was working on there. So Maastricht was a problem-based learning university, still is, so I did some research on problem-based learning and some educational innovation projects. At that time, the focus was very much on assessment. So I was involved in several projects that were going on there, and I discovered that I liked writing, so I wrote about the research we did, and yeah, that's how I rolled in. I didn't do the classical PhD because when I discovered that I enjoyed actually doing research and that I enjoyed doing writing about research, I went to the supervisor there, the head of the department, and told him that I would like to do, that I probably would like to do a PhD. And then we actually decided that I had done already that much of research and published that we probably could make a collection of what I had been doing, and then did some additional work to make a coherent whole, and that's how it's more or less happened, rather than being a clear reason. I think I have been in the lucky position that I could just do things that I liked, and kind of stumbled into into research that I liked writing. I liked collaborating. Maastricht at that time was, it still is, I guess, very international. In fact, the early office was also there in the building where I was, so many researchers came there, especially at the time when Philip, my supervisor, was early president. So I came quickly in contact with international researchers, and that also stimulated me, I guess, to continue doing research, because I liked it, and I enjoyed collaborating with researchers within the faculty and outside the faculty, and I also always had the opportunity to do so. So that's a bit how it started for me, and I guess the reason is not really a deliberate choice, because when I was a student in my master's, I would say I never will work at a university, but I actually never worked outside university. So it happened a bit because I got opportunities that I took, and that I have always had a feeling that I could do things that I like. So I've been in very lucky positions, I think, to came across things that I liked and that I could take up, and so that's how it started, and that's, I guess, why I ended up in doing research. And then after that, I had a PhD, so to speak. There came an opportunity in Antwerp there, and then I moved to Antwerp first to work in a center for excellence in higher education, where that was newly established in Antwerp, with a focus on supporting staff in higher education and doing research on that. And then not that much time later, the University of Antwerp started with a new master program in education and training sciences. And what's more exciting for an educational researcher than starting a new program? So I was I applied to get involved in that, and that's where I still am, actually. So that's a bit how the different places I worked in came across my path, and yeah. So I don't have a clear why. The why is, I just think I had the opportunity to go to places and to do things that I thought were interesting, and was lucky enough to be involved in these. So.
Thank you, David. It's so interesting to hear your reflections on your personal journey, your milestones, and your motivations for becoming a researcher. When you think of the beginning of your career, what would you say? What is your most memorable early career accomplishment?
Memorable early career accomplishment, I do remember very well. So maybe I'll talk about that. That I got the review that we worked on together with colleagues in Maastricht on effects of problem-based learning from the angle of assessment, got accepted in the review of educational research, which was at that time, and I think it still is, the first ranked journal, and it was very hard to get in. It was a very tough review process. It actually was still, and today it sounds really old-fashioned, but the first submission was, I printed 3 versions, one for the editor and one for the editor and 3 others for reviewers, send them in an envelope to the United States with a floppy disk inside, and then you had to wait until a letter came back. So I got a letter with revisions, and then so it was in the old-fashioned way that it still went. Yeah, that was actually crazy if you think about it this time, but that's how well, many researchers, of course, at that time wrote articles and published articles, but then it was very, I still have the letter somewhere. So it's a really paper letter signed with a real pen, the acceptance letter there. And that was, I remember that people, that my supervisor was saying, well, if you manage to get a paper of your PhD accepted in that journal, then you will manage to continue for a while in educational research. And I'm not sure, of course, if that's only that one paper, but it definitely helped because indeed it has been at least well cited. I hope also well read. Yeah, so that was, I didn't realize it well probably back then, but people were saying this is very nice to have this type of publication in this type of journal. So that probably was something that I was told then, and therefore probably remember as a memorable accomplishment, if you talk about that type of accomplishment. So yeah, I would say that I picked that one. And those were the times, and I think we do that to less nowadays, that you would really celebrate also such a publication and would have a nice dinner with all the co-authors together. And I think these were good habits to do so. So I try to keep them alive also, but I sometimes fail.
Yeah, but I think that's a nice ritual to also celebrate these accomplishments in everyday life. Could you tell us about a person or a mentor who made an impact on you or set you on your present path?
Yeah. I think that there have been many, so I'm not sure if I need to pick one or I can list a range of people. Yeah, people. Well, yeah, if I, because you sent me this question beforehand, I have been thinking about this question, who shall I pick? And I think at different stages in my career, there have been different people that I feel supported by. So I think it started probably already in my master, where I had supportive teachers. Erik de Korte was one of my teachers, Lieve Verschaffel, Jan Ehle, also Philip Doshi, who became then the supervisor of my master thesis and of my PhD, when he also had an appointment in Maastricht. So in Maastricht, of course, my supervisor continued supported me, but I also collaborated with other people's. One of the people I have been collaborated with from the start is now a colleague of mine in Antwerp. It's Piet van den Bossen. But also Mien Segers collaborated a lot with and supported me a lot. And then in the early community and the international community, I also felt supported by people like Sari Lindblom and Jan Vermunt or John Richardson in the higher education research community that came to Antwerp several times. And I would say, like in the US, that I have always felt supported by Patricia Alexander, who invited me to become member of the editorial board of Contemporary Education Psychology. So I think there's several people I felt supported by, both in sometimes very explicit, but also sometimes just implicit, by gently pushing me to take some initiatives and to collaborate with me.
I guess this was really helpful to have these people around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the beauty of being a researcher, also, that you do not only, well, of course, your close colleagues, you cannot always choose yourself. And I realize that I have been lucky to be in good company, or during the whole of my career so far. But the nice thing about like associations like EARLI is that you can collaborate with actually whoever you like, and I would definitely and I enjoyed doing that, and I would definitely also recommend to collaborate with nice people in the not only in the EARLI community but definitely in the EARLI community, and that also contributed to well, definitely also to the output, but also to the joy of work and of being a researcher. So that has worked in multiple ways for me. Of course, people like this that I just listed support you. It's helpful. They opened. I think I referred to that already. That the early office was in Maastricht then, and that my supervisor then was early president, so that there were regular meetings, and that I was introduced to these people. I wasn't always aware at that time that they were big names in the field. I just learned to know them as nice people. But I think that's a nice way of looking to any kind of researcher as just people that like to do research. And my experience has actually, without any exception, been that if you have a question for a researcher about his or her research, that they're always happy to talk to you about that, and that is nice. So I don't think people should be shy actually to, if they are interested in the work of somebody or have a question, just go and ask, and you will find almost always people that are interested also in your work, because when you're interested in someone's work, it's probably connected, their work is probably connected to your work. So when building on that is a very nice thing, I would say, and it's an opportunity we have as researchers. And yeah, well, it definitely helped me, like I say, to build my career, but also to do it in a way that I can be lucky to say that I have enjoyed most of it so far.
I would absolutely agree, and this is already great advice for our younger early scholars. Moving on to the second thematic area, the research in your field and your future research. What do you think, what have been the major changes in the field of student and or teacher learning at university since you have been working on it?
Yeah, in terms of researching these fields, I would say that there has been some methodological advancements in terms of research methods, research instruments that are available. I would say that when I started doing research, the default was research based on self-report instruments, and with well, sometimes of course already with multiple measurements, but that was already sometimes considered to be an innovation to do more longitudinal research, while nowadays I think we have much more access also to both measurement instruments that can be used in combination with self-report instruments, like well, there are actually multiple, but online measures of learning, for instance. And also I would say that in terms of the analysis, there's also a request from the field, and which I think it's good to use the analysis that are most appropriate for the research question, and that means that that sometimes complicated analysis are needed. Not always, but there has been quite some steps that have been taken there, and I have been lucky, I think, to be surrounded by people that have pushed me also in taking those steps, and that were mostly more knowledgeable than me, so I could use their a very nice colleague of mine in Antwerp, Sven de Meyer, who's really good at these, and also asking questions about whether you have the appropriate design or are using the appropriate methods. That's helpful. So I think that in terms of doing research, that has been, if I look at articles that I published 20 years ago, oh, that's scary to say that, then I still think they are interesting, but I'm not sure that they would be publishable 22 years later. And that probably for good reason, because the field has moved, and that's a good thing, I would say. So I think, and also, I think that's also very interesting, because I remember that in the discussion of most of my articles, I wrote, well, we have to be aware, for instance, that the data has been collected based on self-report instruments only, and this is something we have to take into consideration. While nowadays we can say that we are able to use multiple data collection tools, and we can triangulate self-report data with other measurement instruments, which give us a richer picture of the phenomena we are investigated, and therefore we can write other things in our discussions that are that involves also, I guess, more multidisciplinary research, which I think is also only interesting, not easier, but definitely interesting. So yeah, I would say that these are developments that I see, and they do not only have methodological implications, if you ask me, because it also has as a consequence that our theories have been built and investigated by means of, for instance, in the field of student learning and higher education, interviews and later large-scale self-report instruments, which have led to interesting and relevant theories. But if we use these theories now and measure at a much more fine-grained level, for instance, with eye tracking research, which measures at the millisecond or even at a smaller time unit of analysis, then we have to think about whether what we measure can still be interpreted in terms of the theories that we have. So I see that as a challenge also, to develop new theories in line with the theories that we already have, in order to make sense of what we measure now. Because yes, we can say that we are triangulating data, but at the same time, I feel a bit hesitant to say that we are really triangulating if you combine, for instance, self-report instrument about how did you learn in general, and just eye tracking data based on how people process a specific task. We're actually measuring probably different but related things, and how to connect these. There's still some work to do, I would say, which is interesting. Yeah, so I think there's some need to develop new theories, not new in terms of totally new from the existing one, but new in terms of yeah, that we more fine-grained at a finer level, and try to see how we can connect them to the more general theories of learning that we have.
I think that's a very interesting and fascinating, but also very challenging field. Well, in your opinion, what will be the most important questions you are continuing to work on? What are your next goals regarding your research? Is it focus on new methods, developing new methods?
I would say that the combination of what I just it's not it's using new methods. I'm not sure that I will be developing one. I think we can borrow a lot of methods from other fields. So therefore, I think interdisciplinary research, learning from what neighboring fields are doing. For instance, I have a very interesting research project now together with colleagues from the Department of Communication Sciences, but also with people from the Artificial Intelligence department. So I think there are already a lot of methods that can be adapted and are already adapted also by other researchers to the field of educational research, trying to make sense of the data that comes out, connect it to existing theories, and then I think that like I said, developing new new theories. And I think there's well, I have a project now, an interdisciplinary project I'm involved in now, which I'm excited about, and that's an interdisciplinary project, and it involves in a simple way very controlled experiments to investigate phenomena with high resolution equipment and very detailed and complicated, so to speak, setups for which we can only use a limited numbers of participants to get involved, learn from that, and then try to see if we put that into real classrooms, what we learn there, then also see what we learn then. So the combination between small scale, high level, between brackets or quotes, research, and then try to see what you can learn from them if you try that in an educational relevant setting, see what's left over from making decisions there about how you can measure things, how you can implement things, learn from that. So that on that tension on the one hand, and also the tension between theories we have available and theories we do not yet have available yet to make sense of what we're doing, is what keeps me busy for a while, I'll hope. And I think that we need both the very controlled experiments, but also interventions in the wild, as they are called sometimes, in order to do meaningful research for our field.
This sounds very exciting and intriguing. I would be happy to read more about this once it's published.
It will take a while, I guess.
With that, we're already at the last and final part, your involvement in EARLI and possible advice you might have for younger researchers. What does being a part of EARLI mean to you, and what are your most memorable experiences when you think about EARLI?
I think EARLI has been very important for me, and still is. It's I call it sometimes my scientific home, or my, or a scientific family. It's that combination of it's a community in which I feel at ease and at home, and I think it's very important for researchers to find such a community. Both the broad EARLI community, but also the different special interest groups where you can find peers to discuss research and other things about. So I think that combination has always worked for me, that I found high quality research within EARLI at conferences, in the journals, but also nice people, nice environment. So I think my most interesting research ideas probably originated late in the evening in a pub or a bar with people from different countries that I would not deliberately put together around the table, but that ended up after for instance, a conference dinner and had still energy to have a drink, and then where are you from and and then some interesting ideas happen. And EARLI has been for me a place where not only these ideas were raised, but where I found also people, maybe it's not so stupid after all, let's try to do a small pilot study together, and we'll see what comes out. And several of the collaborations that I've been involved with started exactly like that, with a small, sometimes crazy idea in the border of an EARLI conference, and then we had an opportunity to meet again after. So so that's why I call it a scientific family, because these things, not only the scientific things are important at EARLI, I think it offers also an environment, or it has offered for me an environment where I could, in a safe way, meet people that we could discuss things with and try things out and present that thing at the next EARLI conference or in a SIG conference, and then discuss whether this idea should be elaborated further or not. And yeah, for me, that has worked very well. The different things that EARLI offers, like not only the big conference, but also the smaller conference. And nowadays they have much more other initiatives, like for instance the mentoring grant. I was very lucky to have Rachel with us in Antwerp. So these small things that bring people together, yeah, are for me what I liked about EARLI, and why EARLI for me has also been important to content-wise work on topics that were relevant with not only nice people but also good people, and offering also an enjoyable work experience and stimulating that. And I think one of my most memorable experiences also relates to this. It was probably memorable in the sense of that this was unique. When EARLI existed X number of years, I don't remember exactly how many. We had a conference in Budapest. I don't know exactly anymore when that was. But someone had the idea there to have a party where every past president got, I would say, half an hour of DJ time. So we got all the past presidents, and there were many researchers that it meant something important for different fields within the community, and it was funny to see them taking the role of a DJ, and so that was memorable in a way, because the people were doing things that they probably normally would not do, but they would stick to their own musical choices. So I'd like that idea of putting people in different situations and making the whole community enjoy that. So that was a memorable evening for me because of these people. I remember Pietro Boscolo playing some classical Italian music, while other people played some funky music and so on. Yeah, that was a memorable experience for me. So maybe we should do that again.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds really great. For the last question, could you give some advice for future higher education researchers? What would it be? Your top tips?
My top tips, I would say, make use of the opportunities that you have to collaborate with people that do interesting work and that you think are nice. So do not stick to your own topic only, but collaborate, support also other people's work, because it's fun and it helps the field. So my advice would be to do that and not to. May sound contradictory, but I would advise people not to be too strategic, because I think it's always a pity when people do things they do not like really, but they think are strategic for their future career. My observation is that they are usually not strategic at all, and because what people criteria change, and people are usually hired or end up in positions because people want them to continue what they do, where they're good at. So if you're doing things that you do not like because you think they are strategic, you might end up being asked to continue to do these things you do not like. While on the other hand, if you do things that you like and you're good at, you will highly likely also be asked to end up in places where people ask you exactly for doing the things that you like. And well, criteria change all the time, so I think it's a bad idea to only try to please criteria. I think it's much better to try to follow your heart, and then of course there are some things that you know that are not stupid to do, but try to do them in those circumstances that you can make them as enjoyable as possible for you. And I think that people realize often too little that they have a lot in their own hands in the field of research, and a lot of so try to make use of this freedom that you have but might not think you have. That would be my advice.
Thank you for this great advice, and I think it's a wonderful final word. Thank you so much, David, for your valuable insights. It was a pleasure listening to you. I hope that all our early researchers find this conversation as fascinating as I did. Well, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciated that.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I felt really, and I feel really honored to be interviewed by you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is a podcast produced by the European Association for Research on Learning and Instruction in collaboration with the Institute of Business Education and Educational Management and the Medialab at the University of St.Gallen. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.